A follower recently told me that while he was having a meal, he played my video out loud and got chewed out by a few of his coworkers. Let me say a couple of things about that. Honestly, it's pretty normal. Most of my videos aren't really suited to being played through speakers in a group setting. It's likely to stir up some strong reaction. The moment you broadcast my content out loud so that your coworkers can hear it too, it basically turns into one-to-many communication and immediately lands in the realm of public opinion. At some point, a notion started spreading in society called reading is useless, but really it's just a naked trick by the elite to fool people at the bottom. So why do some folks think reading is useless? Mostly because certain rural students, after spending practically all their family's savings over the course of a decade or more, reach graduation and find themselves facing bleak job prospects. Then all that frustration and disappointment gets thrown into the argument that reading is useless. It's basically naive college kids at the bottom helping the elite play out this dig your own grave act, and it's pitiful to see. Why do I say it's pitiful? Well, among the lower class, there's certainly no shortage of people who try hard, people who are clever, people who are kind and loyal, but a lot of them never find a way to climb higher. They're stuck showing off their talents within the limits of the lower class. Ultimately, what's missing is the realization that reading is a real pathway to the elite class. Some sharp-minded folks at the bottom use education to change their fates. They deeply appreciate the importance of reading. Once they move into the elite ranks, they place enormous value on their children's education, possibly more than you can imagine, because they know it's the only way to keep their kids in that elite circle. The problem is when people view success solely in terms of money, all our benchmarks and values revolve around financial gain. Skyrocketing housing prices drive this short-sighted rush for results, pushing everyone to want an immediate payoff, reading and education, i.e., big bucks. Making money is no longer seen as a side benefit of being educated. It's become the main reason to get an education. Instead of learning for knowledge or discovery, people are learning for wealth, for more and more wealth. Reading under the influence of money loses its purity. Once people realize that their college experience can't instantly translate into piles of cash, they grow miserable and helpless, inevitably lamenting that reading is useless. Yet do they really get what reading is? Some assume that going to school equals reading. Some think simply picking up a book equals reading. Others believe if you're well-read, that's reading. People have all kinds of interpretations. Meanwhile, the elite tend to have a surprisingly consistent understanding. Reading is the one and only path to joining their ranks. Reading is a learning process. You learn knowledge. You learn methodologies. You build on the achievements of those who came before, and you look out toward the future. Every story playing out in our world can find its prototype in history. Every trouble we face can find some solution in books. Reading is about picking up that wisdom, about learning how to have a conversation with great mind. Only when you grasp that can you really say you understand what reading is all about. Now back to the issue of the lower class. Some kids from poor families finish school, but don't land jobs they like, so they conclude that reading is useless. Frankly, it's just absurd. It shows they haven't recognized their own background or figured out their future. They don't know where they stand or what they're aiming for, which is a pretty dismal situation to be in, almost hopeless. And if they're also gullible enough to accept the reading is useless narrative fed to them by the elite, then they'll genuinely believe all that hard work in school was pointless. Is that actually how things are? Before declaring that reading is useless, maybe they should ask themselves, did I truly study hard? Did I read with real focus? Do I grasp the deeper meaning of reading? If you sit there with your mind totally blank, whenever you pick a bet, yours, yeah, might as well scurry off and hide in a mouse hole. With a mind that empty, you have no right to say reading is useless. Let's set aside how people at the bottom respond to reading is useless. Let's instead look at the elite. Can you find a single member of the elite who doesn't send their kids to school? Anyone who denies their children the best education possible? If reading were truly useless, wouldn't the elite be the first to step up and say so? But on the contrary, their actions point to a common secret. Reading is the only key to becoming part of the elite. Some people figure out this secret and do everything they can to keep it hidden because social resources are limited. And throughout history, most have been controlled by the elite. The fewer people in that group, the more wealth each of them can divide up. If that's the case, why on earth would they let the secret out? The best way to keep it hush-hush is to deny it exists. Spread false beliefs to the unthinking masses at the bottom, telling them reading is useless. At that point, the power of public opinion swings into action. You'll hear story after story about outstanding young adults from rural areas who spent a few years in college only to end up on the streets, barely scraping by. So heartbreaking. They can't afford a house or a car. They can't even support themselves. And people shake their heads and say, see, look how real and dramatic that is. All you poor people just worry about surviving. What's the point of going Yeah. If you swallow that, you're doomed to stay poor for the rest of your life. The lower class is the most stable class, and poor kids will remain poor because you really believe reading has no value. I've talked a lot, and honestly, I'm kind of excited because I'm someone who came from a rural background myself. When I go back, I see so many kids just burying themselves in video games while their urban peers are running around to tutoring sessions all day. That kind of contrast really hits home. If this goes on, is it any wonder that people talk about the rigidification of social classes? It's a man-made phenomenon crafted because it's the most stable arrangement. That said, society hasn't totally closed off the pathway from the bottom to the elite. Whether you take that path depends on you, the one at the bottom, and the choices and dedication you bring to the table. You can believe the elite's propaganda and go on thinking reading is useless. Or you can believe reading can change your fate and have the guts to stand up for your own future. All I can tell you is this: the reading is useless argument is a fabrication by the elite to fool the lower classes. And the only path to the elite is through reading. If you genuinely trust that reading is useless, the only thing it proves is that you're too naive. If you believe reading is useful, but still can't make it in life, that just means you need to step up your game. Knowing where the road is takes direction. Direction matters more than sheer effort. Take the right direction and you'll see twice the results with half the work. Choose the wrong direction and you'll get further away from your goal the harder you try. No matter if you're content with being ordinary or working hard to join the elite, you have to take reading seriously. Never assume that just going to school equals real reading. That's just playing around at a basic level and not how a truly clever person thinks about education. Reading is a path to learning. You learn knowledge, you learn methods, you learn how to understand the world, and you develop ideas on how to transform it. Once you're truly absorbed in the process, you'll discover that everything around you can teach you something, letting you handle what you've read with freedom and ease. In our complex society, one of the toughest challenges is how to see things for what they really are. Reading can help you do exactly that. Peel back the layers until you see the world as it is. And once you can go beyond the surface, you'll uncover what's real. Creating wealth is child's play compared to that. The greatest joy comes from exploring the essence of our world. That inner satisfaction is what gives life meaning,